G'day everyone, welcome to Andy One-on-One. Today we've got the member for Lane Cove, the Planning Minister of New South Wales, Anthony Roberts. G'day Robbo, how are you?
Andy, it's great to be here, mate. Really good.
It's good to have you. So Robbo, let's go back to your very beginning. Served as a captain in rank for the Australian Army Reserve. Do you remember those days? How was that like?
Oh, very fondly. Some of the best days of my life. 10 years with the Reserve. I served overseas in Bougainville, peacekeeping. But some of the things that I certainly learned from the Army, it's about leading people, it's about integrity, it's ensuring that you don't eat until your soldiers have eaten. But again, it's just that bit of service to a nation that's given me so much. It's returning that service to this nation.
That's tremendous. So what made you get involved in politics?
Well, it's an interesting story insofar as I got involved with my local council. Things needed to be done, and then it sort of developed from there until I stood for pre-selection, became the member for Lane Cove, and I've been member for Lane Cove for almost 20 years now.
So when you say you got involved in council, were you a councillor?
A councillor for 10 years. I was the youngest mayor in Lane Cove.
Wow.
And certainly, and this is where, when I decided to run for pre-selection, some of my biggest supporters in that early stage of my life were actually members of our Chinese community that all got together and put a fundraiser on and a big lunch for me and supported me at the very beginning, and I've never forgotten that.
So you serve the state seat of Lane Cove, and we do know that there's a lot of Chinese Australians in your area. What engagements have you made with the Chinese community?
Look, it's very much, our Chinese community tends to be very professional. So be it meeting them for a beer in the local pub or catching up for community events. We have a very strong and integrated Chinese community in Lane Cove that contributes so much. And I have so much in common as a Liberal. We believe in the same things. The importance of family is critical, the importance of small business, and just getting on with creating wealth and employing people and getting government out of the way.
That's right. Well, in your capacity as our state's Minister for Planning, we've seen a rise in the cost of living, and people are struggling to keep up with the repayments for their homes. So what have you done to address those issues? So
government is addressing the cost of living right across the board, be it with electricity, water, things that we have the ability to actually influence at a state level. And Don Perrottet is doing a great job there in ensuring that we take the pressure off business and families when it comes to affordability. With planning, can I say the conversation starter at any lunch or a barbecue is how much your home has increased in value over the past couple of months.
That's correct.
The second conversation is how are my children going to afford to buy a home in Sydney? So that's the challenge that I've been given to solve. And it comes basically down to supply. So from the last Labor government, we inherited a 100,000 home deficit. So we've been playing catch up since then. And that's why as Planning Minister and Minister for Homes, I'm increasing the amount of rezonings right across the board, increasing the amount of homes coming on the market, and we're also using other tools to ensure that we get young people, first home buyers, into the marketplace. And that's where we're looking at now some of the government programs about ensuring, for example, you don't have to find the large upfront stamp duty if you're a first home buyer. So if you're a young person now, you'll have a choice. You can either pay a levy, because the first place that young people buy is it's not their end home. They tend to get into the marketplace, build up their equity, and then as the family, they might get married, have children, they then move. But this will enable young people to get into the marketplace, buy a unit or a home sooner, and then not have to pay that upfront stamp duty fee.
That's tremendous effort.
No, it's important. Look, it's really important because
especially for young people.
Yeah, and once you're in the housing market, you're set. But it's making that first step, getting into the marketplace as a young person. We want to get younger people into their homes earlier rather than having to wait around, sort of trying to find another $30,000, for example, to pay stamp duty. So effectively, you're way ahead if you take the option of the levy. I think it's effectively 10 years before you start sort of having to pay more than the stamp duty. So it's actually effective in ensuring that we move young people out of rental and into their own homes, and then they can build on the equity there and then upsize. So the key thing for the Liberal Party in New South Wales is we want to make home ownership for young people not a dream but a reality. And that's why we're bringing in a number of policies that will ensure that our younger people can get out of rental earlier and into the marketplace, because we understand that once you're in the marketplace, you're pretty well set. And basically, rental money is dead money.
Well, you mentioned about, Robbo, earlier on that we're getting rezoning done to provide more homes, but yet we're seeing a very slow process in rezoning, especially when it comes to council, and DA approvals can take a very long time. What do you think is the reason?
Well, there are a number of reasons there. Quite often it's the lack of planners. So many councils just don't have the capacity to rezone or put DAs through. So what we're doing, and I put a flying squad together, we're putting a large amount of money into assisting councils to work through the DA processes faster. We now have programs in place that we can actually monitor councils, and when we see those DAs lagging or drifting by way of a time frame, we are active in actually participating with councils and saying, look, do you need more resources? And can we assist you? And that's proven to be highly successful in ensuring that when you put a DA in, could be for a renovation or a rezoning in, we can actually fast track that, going through all the processes, but again, just through providing greater resources to those councils.
That's awesome, Robbo. Australia's been through very difficult times and unprecedented times. We've experienced a time of bushfires, a time for floods, and we're through the pandemic, and a lot of homes have been destroyed. So is there anything that your department is doing in particular to ease the damages caused as a result of those floods?
Well, we've seen everything from floods, fires, effectively, we've had mice plagues, we've had the COVID pandemic, but I've got to say New South Wales, out of all states, has been probably the best place because we've managed our finances well. We understand, just as you've got to manage the finances in a household, you've got to manage the finances as a government. And that's why we opened up earlier, we got businesses back on track, we're able to provide that assistance to small business particularly because we understand that small businesses are the backbone of our economy.
That's absolutely right.
And that's because we've had great financial management, and that's why states like West Australia shut down, because their health system wasn't up to speed to actually deal with the pandemic. Whereas New South Wales, we've invested so much in new hospitals, so much in our health system, we were able then to open up earlier and basically stay on top of the pandemic.
So what do you foresee in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of growth and development in New South Wales?
There's only one way it's going, and that is up. We are seeing growth right across regional New South Wales, as well as those great cities of Newcastle, Sydney and Wollongong, and we're seeing the development of new cities. I opened up with the Premier the Bradfield City, the city centre out of the Aerotropolis just the other day, where it was the first sod turning of a city since Canberra in the nation, and that's exciting for us.
It is,
and that's why we're going to have a population increase right across New South Wales, and that's why we need those homes for those key workers as we're bringing industry back on board. Immigration will come back on board, which is tremendous, and that's why we need those homes. But it's also the government assisting, basically business to set up their sites within New South Wales itself.
Well, do you think that Parramatta is still going to be the next CBD, as people always say, or?
Look, I love Parramatta. Parramatta, we're working with a great council there. We're seeing great things occurring there. But it won't just be Parramatta. You've got the growth in Liverpool, Blacktown, Penrith, in the northwest. You've got buildings going up. But importantly, with those buildings, the residential buildings, you've got commercial buildings. You've got light industrial. And that's our vision, that you'll have a number of cities where you'll be able to live and work and play very close together. You won't have to take that commute into the CBD through Parramatta anymore. You'll be able to actually stop off at Parramatta and work there if you're not already living there.
A lot of people are waiting for the new airport to be built and open to public. When is that happening?
Well, can I tell you, we are on track, notwithstanding the rain events we've had. So the construction industry has had it pretty difficult. Yeah. We've got supply issues, there's been a lack of tradespeople, and of course, the weather hasn't helped. But I can tell you today, right? And this is an exclusive for you, Andy.
Yep.
And that is the roof of the new terminal will be up by February of next year.
Wow. That's very soon.
That's very soon.
Is that as soon as before the state election happened?
Before the state election, we'll have that roof on that terminal, and it's if you haven't been out there, you should see the amount of work that is being undertaken there. But importantly, what we're doing is we're putting the infrastructure in first. So we're putting the train in, we're putting the roads in, and then we'll see the growth. And we're investing as a government out there to bring the CSIRO in, particularly to be one of those key anchor tenants out there, and you'll see a magnificent new well-designed city that our children can enjoy.
I'm very looking forward to seeing that happen.
So am I.
All right, Robert, so what large-scaled master plans have you led for New South Wales?
So we've got Barangaroo, for example, which is going to be magnificent when it finishes, but also right across New South Wales, master planning is critical for any development. This is about building living communities and very livable, resilient communities. Be it in the city or be it in greenfield sites out further west or in regional areas, because we want people to be able to live in places that are not just a home, but it's a community. So it's about building better, stronger communities, more parks, a greater connectivity with shops, schools, hospitals, all those services. So that's very much what drives us right across the board when it comes to any change, be it a new building in Crow's Nest or a new subdivision out in Leppington.
What opportunities do you think are there for farmers out there in regional areas?
Well, certainly we've announced a new agri-tourism support package which will enable farmers to diversify. So for example, rather than relying upon just, for example, cropping or rearing beasts, the ability to have farm stays, the ability to actually enable them to drought-proof themselves. So if you've got a bad year or a bad crop, that's basically offset by the fact you might have farm stays or you might be selling produce straight into the marketplace. So it's about that diversification, because I've got to say, we will see huge growth in regional New South Wales, and we're prepared for that. We've invested hugely in new schools, hospitals, other government support services right across regional New South Wales, which has never been done before. And of course, what that does is it brings more professionals to towns, greater services, and that's where we need to build the homes. And you will see a huge growth in housing development right across regional New South Wales.
I do understand when it comes to development, people sometimes might be concerned with overdevelopment and want to have that kind of environmental protection component of the development process. And I've heard that your department has initiated a native tree program with Bunnings. Is that a thing that you guys did?
So when I was planning minister last, I brought in a program for planting 1 million trees by the end of this year. And I've got to say,
a lot of trees.
I think we've nailed it. I think we're on track to plant 1 million trees in metropolitan Sydney by the end of this month. So that's 1 million more trees where you get a greater level of tree canopy,
more oxygen.
So it's just great for the environment, but also aesthetically, it's fantastic.
Now, talking beyond politics, you're a dad of lovely boys and children. What's it like to be a dad but still be heavily involved in politics?
Well, I make sure that I have a good work-life balance. I love my boys. I've got 4 boys. I've got John, who's 13, Sam, who's 11, I've got Tommy, who's 7, and then I've got little Joey, who's almost 2 years of age. So they keep me young.
You truly love your boys. They keep coming.
Look, as I said before, Andy, family is so critical to our society, but having a strong family, I'm proud of my boys. They're all different, they're all amazing. I've got an amazing wife that keeps it all together. But there's for me, a good night isn't going out to a black tie event. A good night for me is basically being at home with my family, a nice meal, sitting down and watching TV or playing a game.
So how do you keep that balance? Would it be after hours from Parliament or?
Yeah, and look, very much so. I mean, the ability of getting home from Parliament at a reasonable hour is important. And the fact that in state politics, there's not a huge amount of travel. I feel sorry for those politicians in Canberra that fly from Perth. You're away from your family. At least of a night I can be home with my wife and my family in bed. And again, there's the best times I have putting my boys, quite frankly, into the car of a Sunday, and I take them for a drive. And we have new experiences. last weekend. We went into Chinatown in the city. I've got to say, we need to do a lot more with respect to revamping
Absolutely.
that precinct.
Absolutely.
I think it's got very tired. I think
It's getting quiet now.
It's too quiet. I remember the great days.
Yeah.
But also, I think that's a reflection of the fact that Chinatown's been replicated in Parramatta, Liverpool. So
it's happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere, and it's great. And this is what I consider competitive tension amongst the cities. You know, councils have got to be aware that they've got to actually make it easy for people to open a restaurant, right? And be able to provide that service. So
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. So for me, being with family and sharing new experiences is just wonderful.
Now, let me ask you this question. You've got 4 boys, and after getting involved in politics for some time now, do you think you would have one of your kids, or if not more, to get involved in politics one day and have big ambitions?
Look, for me, it's always been, it's a life of service. I'm very lucky. Anyone that lives in Australia, you've won life's lottery to start with. So for me, as long as you give back, I don't care what they do in life. There is no pressure on them, whether they become a farmer, become a doctor, become a teacher, as long as they contribute back to society. And that's one thing I always drive with them. I don't push them academically. For me, if I have respectful, polite boys with great manners, that's all I ask for.
To wrap up today, what are your views on the upcoming state election?
Well, I've got to say, we have had 12 years, some difficult years, but we have achieved so much for the people of New South Wales, and I think that's reflected in our cabinet decisions, where we don't make short-term solutions, or short-term policies. We always think for the next generation, and that's what is intrinsic to all our thinking, is are we making the state better for the people of New South Wales? Are we supporting families? Are we supporting small business? Will our children be better off than we are? And that's what underpins every decision we make. And that's why we made some pretty tough decisions and tough calls, right? But they've worked out to be the best calls, because again, this is creating intergenerational wealth and opportunity.
That's right. Thanks so much, Robert,
Andy,
for today.
You're a legend.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
your
mate.
contribution.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
mate.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Cheers.
Here's cheers. Thank you.